first time, or welcome to the podcast here in DC.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So I wanted to talk to you. We always go back and forth on these concepts of curtain wall and window wall, given people love to bucket these as a product. And a lot of times it really is a concept or means and methods of pre-assembling a wall panel and then installing it on a building. I think Matt Bronsko, give him a shout out, loves this whole curtain wall. Doesn't have to be all glass, and it is a means and methods of drawing in the building. So maybe we can focus to start a little bit on window wall, because that is something that might be near and dear to your heart here locally.
Absolutely. That's one of the challenges. And that word means different things to different people. Developers like to use that word because it encompasses an application with a certain economy to it. Manufacturers like it because it means a specific application that they may be tailoring their product to. So the challenge is it's not any one specific product. It's an application. And so the biggest challenge is it a window product that's being installed in a slab-to-slab configuration? And there's great economy to that, not having as much cold form metal framing, backup wall construction to deal with. But you're really pushing the window technology pretty far to go slab-to-slab, take building movement and other things. But then it can also be a curtain wall product that is, traditionally curtain wall products are very robust because they have to do a lot of things. There might be spanning glass slabs and covering an entire building with it. So you've got a lot of requirements there. But if you're smart about it, you can economize that system as a manufacturer and take off, strip away all the belts and suspenders that makes that super robust for I can install it on office spans and large spans, or now we're thinking about a window wall is primarily thought of in the residential space. So we're thinking about residential spans and slab to slab as opposed to spanning by the slab. Now you can, smaller extrusions, not as deep of a section, different attachment methods. Yet you're gaining some of the really nice characteristics of the curtain wall system with water management, acoustics, unitization, maybe, etc.
So I have about 17 questions. It's not what you just said, but a few immediate takeaways to move next. We can never bucket all of these into a single application, whatever. But as a blanket statement, till we maybe say curtain wall best for office, window wall best for multifamily application.
I would hesitate. In general, I think economics of it probably play out that way. The window products are, we're very lucky to live in a time where sort of the advancements of the unitized curtain wall system have flowed down into the window market space. So we're getting some really nice performance products, still at a relatively low cost point. Curtain wall, it's a little harder to, not maybe the best term, but dumb down the system a little bit, strip off the extra bells and whistles to get it down to that system. But there are products, curtain wall products, that work well in a window wall application fairly efficiently. And if you want to do things like structural glazing on, 2 or 4 sides of the assembly, it's a little easier to do that with curtain wall system, a base chassis that's curtain wall, than it is with a window product. Not that it can't be done. Now you're looking at things that are highly proprietary where you're going to have trouble finding a compatible or a comparable system from another manufacturer.
From a price standpoint, if you have to explain this to an owner, forget the subcontractor, the installers and manufacturers that actually know how it comes together, and do it to an owner that's just seeing it as a product, this and this. Why is curtain wall perceived to be more expensive than window wall? In not just the material itself, the whole package.
I think you have to look at the sophistication of the manufacturer, the robustness of the assembly, not just the materials, but sort of the construction process. And, curtain wall manufacturers often are doing very challenging projects. And so that's somewhat baked into the process of how you design it, how you do the analysis, how the fabrication plant is set up. It might be different from a window manufacturer. Not that there's anything wrong with a window manufacturer doing a window wall product in a high-end application. But I think it's just where they're coming from, and to sort of drag a little bit that with them into this space where both of these systems sort of meet.
Yeah, no, a few high-end window wall designers that might get a little upset.
It is. And you know what? That's the thing, is the generalizations are tough. In this space, it's very product specific. And while there may be overarching trends, there are many manufacturers that have very smartly adapted their products for certain applications. But, there are trends, and we have to be cognizant of that. When we don't yet have a particular product picked out, we have to sort of think about that. But that sort of raises the importance of getting to a product early and thinking about the viability, adaptability of that product to a specific application, a specific design. And that is important because in this window wall space, everybody's got their own solution, their own mousetrap, and they're different and not interchangeable necessarily without, some effort in incorporating them into a design.
How do you think about performance generally as it relates to the two? Do you prefer the compartmentalization component or aspect of a window wall? Or, I think an argument can be as it relates to air, water infiltration, thermal performance. I think some people like that aspect where you can kind of pinpoint a leak or a failure point. At the same time, it requires way more field labor as it relates to receptor perimeters, going back out on a swing stage to install your slab edge covers. So another trade-off, obviously, you can't bucket that in its entirety, but kind of immediate gut reaction performance standpoint per wall or window wall.
I would say that I like the higher end performance where things are compartmentalized. You have individual, units that are fabricated in a shop and, high quality control brought out to the site. I like that a lot, but it's not always just because I like the performance of one. That is one of many, many, many competing factors. And ultimately, my goal or project is not to be the person making decisions. I'm trying to educate, make sure that everybody's ideas, everybody's priorities are heard, and that the teams that are making these decisions together are doing so, eyes wide open with all the things on the table, so that if I want that thing that's going to perform a little bit better, it's going to come at the expense of something else that someone at the table may be very interested in. And so you've got to be able to put those things up early so that you're not making big movements later on in the project where, oh gee, I can't do this, or I need to use this other product. Now I've sacrificed a whole bunch of other things that might be pretty important to some of the stakeholders on the project.
Now, how has your experience been internally at SGH? You're communicating some of these priorities, the lens of viewing a project team and projects specifically to the application and the owner, just given there's so many politics and influences and driving variables in the respective markets that you can't just put 5 SGHers at this table and speak the same language to all 5 of them.
That's exactly right. I think partially it's the process. I think the process can be translate of thinking about what are all the conditions, how do we communicate things, how do we interact as a team. That translates everywhere. And that's the thing that we're trying to teach across the company in different offices is the process, being sensitive to different stakeholders and their ideas, thinking about prioritizing performance, constructability, durability, implied maintenance demand, all of the things that we have to think about so that we can get an early gauge about what are the key things for this project and with this group. That doesn't care where the geography is. Then you start thinking about, all right, once you've gotten to that point, you can say, all right, what are the products in this marketplace that maybe the installers are familiar with? And that is important. We don't, it's not that you can't take a product into a new market space, but you have to have an installer that is familiar enough, and you might have to spend a little upfront investment to make that go smoothly. And so we do want to play to sort of market sensitivities about what products are available. If you're in the Northeast, there's a lot more curtain wall than the further south you go, where it may be more window wall is made out of window products per se, right? And same East Coast, West Coast, where we have seismic requirements and things like that may drive other decisions. So those things are a decision point in the process that can be adaptable regardless of your geography. And then you get to the last one that you mentioned, which is who are the players? The architect might have preferences. If there's a contractor involved, a CM involved early to provide input, they may have preferences. And that's based on experience. It's based on their own personal experience, and that can't be discounted. It's important. And the owner, of course, is going to have sensitivities, both success stories or maybe places where project teams stub their toe and they don't want to repeat it. So they're just, that is verboten. It's off limits. We're not going there. So we have to take that into account. And that's why I think this whole process is important to get done as early as possible. Obviously, in new design projects, if you can be involved early on when the initial renderings of a project are developed. Once you have a rendering, people have it stuck in their mind what that project's going to be. And that drives a lot of decisions. And so you want to be thinking about, is this compatible with where we're going to end up, pretty early in the process. So,
Brad, thanks for coming on. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Glad